this taxi lekgotla, will anything come out of it? I mean, what hope is there when they're already divided going into this lekgotla? Because the National Taxi Alliance says, no, we not want to be a part of it. Some tweets here. Relebo Gamashane says, the way the taxi oaks by Kapuso and how government bows to them, one day they are going to demand a few seats go parliament. In the Department of Transport, it makes sense why they were excluded from the word go on e-tolls. All right, let's go to Godfrey in Kempton Park.
Hi, Titi.
Yes, I'm good. Welcome.
Fine, thanks. Before I get into the issue,
please speak up a bit.
Yeah, I'm saying that before I get into the issue, I think the designer is a smart guy and intelligent, but unfortunately he failed to advise, his father accordingly, which actually happened in the way that it happened, that we were in this mess. But anyway, the main reason I called is about this one of Julius suggesting that we don't need borders, in Africa. Already, as we speak, our systems, like for instance in the health system, we are unable to actually service all these people who are in this country because we've got such a huge number of people who are here and undocumented. So if we're going to say everyone is welcome, and already we are struggling to service, our own people, including those who are here undocumented, then it means now the country is going to collapse. So I think there you need to be advised that, as much as we must unite as Africans, we can create conducive environments and all that, but we can't reverse that we are a country and we've got countries in Africa.
Okay, thank you very much. Godfrey, let's speak to Butana in Rosebank.
Hoe meneer?
Baie goed, dankie meneer. En met u?
Goed. Clayton Mackenzie is in the Joburg market, maar ek is nie daar so nie.
I can't help you.
The president, former president, please, man, let him not go there with twisted, coiled, convoluted story. Go at Zondo.
Yeah.
He must answer truthfully and must not go there at double agents. What? He must just go and answer there. That commission was brought there because of him. Because of him and his fellow comrades. So he must go there and answer. If he's not happy after answering that, he can go to High Court.
Yeah.
Up to Constitutional Court. He knows the route.
I got you.
He
I
went
got
there
you.
before.
Yeah. Someone who's innocent, he really behaves strangely. His analysis. Let's go to Peter.
Oh, hi, Titi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Maybe let me first just applaud you for the very good job that you're doing, my brother.
Thank you.
Mine is a very short one, right? I am not an economist, but I know that Ntate Mweleti Mbeki goes with the title political economist. I think those who've got the know-how would have to clarify the power family on whether his computing of growth, economic growth, was actually spot on. With the little knowledge that I've got, I think there are a number of factors that get taken into consideration before you declare whether there is growth or not. And one of the critical ones is a comparative analysis between one period and the other.
Right.
Now, the simplistic method that he adopted, by way of saying there's going to be a negative growth of 7%, and if there is an anticipated economic growth of 3.3%, he computed it to an overall growth of 10.3%. I believe he got it completely wrong there. I may be wrong myself.
No, I hear what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely wrong there.
what you're saying makes sense, and there's a lot of people who had picked him up on that, or his, as you say, his computing of the way he calculated what 3% growth means in what the way that the Minister of Finance was talking about it. On WhatsApp, I have the following messages that Sipo in Pretoria says, Titi, have you heard how whites speak to fellow Africans? Julius and Ndlovu are giving them their own medicine. Afternoon, Titi. I have to be honest, I don't have a car, bicycle, nor do I travel this time of the afternoon because I work from home. Mara, listening to Lebohang Phokela and his traffic slot, I feel like I see the roads. Keep up the good work, guys. Mara, this was just for Mr. Lebohang Phokela on a lighter note. That's Zanele in Soshanguve. Okay, I'll pass on the message. It was just for Phokela. Be like that when Zanele. I'll tell him when he pops in, Horin, no phone. These ANC politicians are so used to capturing institutions and organizations for their benefits. National Taxi Association should refuse to be amalgamated in a process that will only benefit a few. This one taxi organization they want is exactly what destroyed unions, particularly COSATU, because only a few in the leadership were captured to silence the rest. That's from Moremo Holo. And one more, where is that? Yeah, here's one more here. It says, good afternoon, Titi. According to your caller, Mr. Mbeki is supposed to praise the government that's doing so bad. There's nothing positive to say about them, about this current administration. They're busy erecting statues on top of others whilst our economy is in a shambles. Stephen in Thembisa said that one. 0861 987 000 at Tabisotema or at Power FM on Twitter or at you can also use remember the hashtag Power Drive. Entle is in agreement, says, hi, it's true, Dutuzane is hot, Limpo is right, but vote for him, never. Yeah, I mean, come on, we're really going to be voting on the basis of looks. If people were voted for looks, who would remain in government? I know I've got time, my time is up, I should have asked you this earlier. If our cabinet were people who were appointed there on the basis of looks. Let's have that conversation tomorrow, to say who would retain their place in cabinet if it was based on looks. Peter, have you done your duty for the day?
You win.
Titi, it's Entle here. Definitely Ututuzane hot. He is hot. The guy is hot. Phokela is just in denial because you Phokela.
All right, we'll pick up on this conversation tomorrow around hotness, and if hotness is a criteria for electing our leadership. How many of the current leadership of the various political parties would still be in office? I think that could be an entertaining one. Let's have that conversation tomorrow, shall we? I think I'm looking forward to that one. All right. Thank you so much for your company. Stay tuned for that special broadcast of Power Business with Tumisang Ndlovu. And that's coming up next. And after that, Power Perspective from 8 to midnight.
Power News.
In your top stories this hour, National Taxi Alliance places the blame for its boycott of the taxi lekgotla on government, and civil servants threaten strike over the planned 4-year freeze on salary increases. Good evening, I'm Ananda Homo. The National Taxi Alliance has cited lack of honesty and respect from Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula as the reason for their non-participation in the taxi lekgotla. The National Lekgotla got underway today with the NTA pulling out at the 11th hour. Its spokesperson Theo Malele says the minister has also not kept promises on the COVID-19 relief fund promised to them. He says that while the alliance is of the view that lekgotla is necessary, they will not take part in a gathering that's clearly favoured towards the Santako.
We've always been of the view that the transformation of the taxi industry it's central to our agenda, and the professionalization and modernization thereof is also key to us. Yes, indeed, we know that this will bring about the necessary change.
Old Mutual Rewards is designed to educate and empower you financially while rewarding you for your progress along the way. You will receive points for taking steps towards your financial dreams, and depending on the number of financial needs you have met with certain Old Mutual products, you will earn additional points. Points can be redeemed in a variety of ways. You can reinvest your points into the savings portion of your Old Mutual money account. Alternatively, you can buy prepaid airtime, data bundles, or vouchers which you can use to shop at our reward partner stores. Voucher codes are sent to you electronically in an email or SMS and can simply be shown or read out to the cashier. It's that simple. You can even donate your points to charity. Earning and spending points is a lot of fun, but the real reward is being empowered to make better financial decisions. Old Mutual Rewards is free and accessible to all, so take the first step towards financial freedom and sign up today at www.oldmutual.co.za/rewards.
To the rampant corruption in the country rather than take from the working class already hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The PSA's Robin Maleka has slammed Mboweni for making what he believes were premature pronouncements.
The issues that he has raised there, they should have been left out to be discussed at the relevant forum and not for him to pronounce, especially on the wage freeze. So based on that, we believe that as the unions in the public service, we are going to table demands. As of tomorrow, we are having a caucus, and we believe that we need a positive response to our demands, failing which all the public service will be shut down to a standstill.
The South African Cabin Crew Association says SAA needs new management in order to function effectively. This follows the announcement by the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, that government has allocated yet another 10.5 billion to the broke airline. South African Cabin Crew Association's President Sibanyoni Mugambi says that this latest taxpayer bailout will only work if management is committed to ensuring the money is not flushed down the drain. This money will be made available by reducing the funds allocated to national departments and their entities, as well as cutting from provincial and local government grants. Sibanyoni Mugambi says the money should be guarded against corrupt individuals and further misuse of funds.
What we are planning to do is guard this money that's coming very jealously. Hence, we are saying, even with the management, that we need the management replaced completely and the board, and actually come up with a management team which is actually fit for purpose and can run the new SAA before any money is paid over. And we will do everything to ensure that that is done. And also on top of that, we will rally behind a new management team that actually know what they are doing and are not corrupt.
And the Free Economic Freedom Fighters leader Julius Malema says they are fighting for all strategic sectors of the economy. Malema addressed his supporters outside the Randburg Magistrates Court after his appearance on the assault incident that occurred at the funeral of struggle stalwart Winnie Madikizela-Mandela in 2018. Malema and MP Tumisang Ndlovu are accused of assaulting Johannes Venter, a police colonel, during the funeral. Venter alleges the pair viciously pushed him for refusing to grant them entry into the Fourways Memorial Park Cemetery in Johannesburg, where Madikizela-Mandela was buried. They've pleaded not guilty to the charges, and the matter has since been postponed to March. This is what Malema had to say.
We are fighting for the land, for the banks, for the mines, and all strategic sectors of the economy. We took a decision as the EFF. We said all farms and all shops, including the hotels and every private sector, must hire at least 60% of South Africans.
Malema further says that their main priority as a party is land, not shopping malls.
How can you have a mall when you don't have the land? How mall in the township? It means you want a white man. You want a white man to come and build a mall in the township. Demand the land in the township. Build your own mall. Go and hire white managers to come and manage it for you. They must work for you. We don't want small things.
In the markets, the rand was last trading at 16 rand 32 to the US dollar, 21 rand 12 to the pound, and 19 rand 8 to the euro. Gold was last trading at $1,872.46 an ounce, and Brent crude oil at $38.20 a barrel. In your weather for tomorrow, sunny weather conditions are expected across the Gauteng province. Johannesburg and Vereeniging expected to peak at temperatures of 32 degrees, while Pretoria peaks at 34. Recapping the top story in Power News this hour, the National Taxi Alliance has cited lack of honesty and respect from Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula as the reason for their non-participation in the National Taxi Lekgotla, which got underway today.
In power traffic, starting off in Alberton, if you are traveling on the N12 westbound, there's a vehicle that's broken down before the Reading interchange, and that's what's slowing down traffic with delays starting just before you get to Voortrekker Road, going down towards passing that incident. The M1 South is still experiencing a lot of pressure this evening. Also seems to be caused by another broken down vehicle that seems to be inside the double-decker section, and delays are currently at about 15 minutes from Parktown. Over in Fourways on the N1 South, you can expect delays as you are approaching the William Nicol Drive exit. And lastly, if you are in Pretoria North and traveling on Roslyn Road westbound, there's queuing traffic as you are approaching Doreen Avenue.
Power News. Power to you who envision a South Africa alive. To you who have your ear to the ground of this golden plateau. Immersed in conversations that are yet to be heard. To you who realize and materialize all that can possibly be done under the South African sun. You who won't give up until what's right is done. The time has come to dial into a frequency that allows you to really be you. To you we say power. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
Power Business is brought to you by YEP, a digital marketplace for small trusted businesses.
Power Business with Tumisang Ndlovu.
Monday to Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. and Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m. on Power 98.7.
Good evening to you all. I am Tumisang Ndlovu, and welcome to the special broadcast of the Old Mutual Women in Dialogue. It is a conversation that involves a dynamic group of women that are joining me on stage. We are going to introduce them all as soon as we get into the conversations that we are meant to be having today. Focus for the evening will simply start with inclusion as well as the background in terms of how these dynamics fit into participation as well as representation in the current landscape of a South African economy. Not much is going well, but we do need to look at the silver linings. Do join this conversation. We are live on Power 98.7 as well as on our sister station Capricorn FM. We are also live on the YouTube channel on the Power FM page on that YouTube outlet. Do also give us your views and comment on the conversations that we are going to have this evening on the social media pages of Power 98.7. The hashtag to use this evening is hashtag OM Old Mutual Women in Finance. Allow me to take this opportunity to introduce our panelists this evening. We are joined by Nomkulego Kobodo, who is at times termed as the first black chartered accountant female in South Africa. We're going to get into that conversation about how you feel about that terminology. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Also joining us in this panel is Gloria Serobe. She serves on the Solidarity Fund and is one of the founding members of WIPHOLD. Thank you for your time this evening. Councillor Thembi Nkadimeng, who's the president of Salga, is also on this panel. Good evening.
Good evening and good evening to our listeners.
From the side of Old Mutual, we are joined by a fairly young and progressive executive, Nomaswa Zingwane. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and I'm excited to be here.
Also from Old Mutual is Thembisile Nkadimeng, who we had an opportunity to speak to earlier this week, so I'm a little bit much more relaxed to have this conversation with you because I'm not that intimidated having a lovely chat with you during the week.
Good evening, Tumisang.
We hope that you will enjoy this conversation because we are going to try to be as robust as we can be, but delve into the topics that we often shy away from having. Mamnonkulego, for you, the terminology of the first black South African female chartered accountant. Is that part of a discourse that we should be even pushing as a narrative in current day South Africa, as we are still lagging behind when we talk about representation?
I'm actually amazed. It's been 33 years. My son, who works at Old Mutual, whenever he sees something about me, he says, Mama, I'm amazed that after so long,
yes,
your story still inspires so many. So when I qualified, I remember I was a shy girl from the Eastern Cape, and suddenly the media descended in the Eastern Cape, and I was like, no, please, just leave me alone. I did this for me. I don't need all this attention.
Yeah.
And someone from the SABC said, no, this is not about you at all. You are now a mentor for a whole lot of young people and women. And that sobered me up, and I realized that from then onwards, I must just accept what fate has put upon me.
Yeah.
But, I was saying that for 33 years, I've been having these talks, starting with going to schools at that time and inspiring people. And I'm always amazed when I meet those young people who are now women, saying, Mama, you came to my school and now I'm a CA, or I was a married woman, because of what you did, I went back to school, now I'm this and that, which is great. But when I look at South Africa today, I just feel like we have not seen the shift that we needed to see in this area of women and black people. And for me now, this is no longer comfortable. When I left the profession, I said, semi-retirement, I've done my job, tick every box, please leave me alone. So I've we cannot live a world like this for our children. I've got 3 beautiful granddaughters. They must arrive at a new world. And so I'm spitting fire on the issue of prejudice against women and racism in South Africa. And I hope we can discuss more and more about that today.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow, she's spitting fire.
That is a conversation we are definitely going to have, Mamnonkulego, because we face it in the corporate world, and I'm also interested in finding out from Gloria. At the beginning stages of WIPHOLD, it was a group of women who decided that also, like what Mamnonkulego has said, that it's not only about me, it's about those who come after me. For you, have you seen this shift in the landscape where women are at least starting to see some sort of representation? Because we often refer to the old guard, but the likes of myself are an anomaly.
I think I must start by saying when Nkululeko is spitting fire, you must be very afraid. I've been with her a long, long, long time. I know that fire, I know it. So I think the country must wake up again. I think for me, maybe it is because, we will talk about WIPHOLD and how it got to there, but the basic thing for me is that the issue of exclusion of women, once we understood that, first it was hugely legislated. I think most professionals today do not know that it was legislation that women must be excluded, and we need to emphasize that. And because it was legislation, it means the reversal of that legislation, the policymakers must deal with that because it's law. But typically WIPHOLD says, while that is happening and it's going to take a long time, what is that we can do under the current legislation that should not wait for the amendment of laws and all of those kind of things? And I think the third portion is that there's legislation, there is a informal exclusion of women. Then you shift to rural. Rural is also legislated, except it's not on paper. And you've got to, the tactic has got to do that. And as WIPHOLD, that is what we've done for all the 25 years we've been in operation. Worrying about the formal legislation, working with the policymakers, and doing those things that we can do even under the current legislation while things are still being fixed, and then taking head on these unwritten rural legislations, which actually cause this. And for you to be able to do all of that, we had to be present in all of them. And so when you see WIPHOLD working very closely with traditional leaders, it's because that legislation is very important for us. And we have to take it head on and do what we have. So the whole thing of women inclusion is a lot of heavy lifting, very heavy lifting. It's in corporate, it's in business, it's in general life, but it's devastating. And just to say one more thing, maybe because I'm getting softer, I'm over 60 years old, I can do with a peaceful conversation about it, as opposed to bashing just about any man you meet and causing havoc. Some of us are married, and we've got children who are boys.
Yeah.
And I don't see my son as that person who must be bashed. I will take a different line when I see that, because I'm a mother. So there's something there that is soft that I'm looking for as to, this is a very serious thing. Can we all look at it? It requires heavy lifting. It requires us understanding exactly how it happened. And those written legislations and those unwritten, we have to be present and study them. Because even when you go to the rural areas, you are not going there to rearrange those traditions. Some of them we don't know. Even when you want to question, you have to say, let me understand it first, before I actually whatever. So that is what we've done, but we'll come back to WIPHOLD. Thank you.
We will definitely come back to WIPHOLD. Councillor Nkadimeng, the ease that Gloria is talking about in fighting, in inverted commas, some of the battles. You've worked in local municipal structures. You are the president of Salga. Well, the rhetoric there and the room, temperature of the room is very male-dominated, but I've watched you for a number of years and you do it with simple ease and class. What is it that you bring and sprinkle onto the table?
Wow, I wish it was easy. I wish it was easy. It's a very different domain, but I think it's synonymous to the struggles that you meet in the corporate world, be it in business. Politics are shrewd. Local government is even worse. I was laughing with my colleagues this morning because I was running in between the taxi transport Lekgotla, and I was having an acting mayor who started a council on my behalf. So when I'm saying to the DG, but I've addressed, I've got to leave, and ask the president of the country to excuse me before he addresses, something which is very much uncommon. And I'm saying to them, but you guys don't understand the local government terrain. I could be sitting here and somebody's doing a motion of no confidence in my council. That's how unstable the world can be, and it keeps you on your toes. And you have got to be able to be responsive, not only to the politics, because local government, contrary to the others, can never be about politics, but should be about the provision of services. Because on top of all the politicking and the coalition and whatever, think about the waste that will not be collected at your door the following day. You wouldn't like it. A sewer that is streaming down the road, and a couple of all of those dysfunctionalities. Unfortunately, we are trying to balance the two. And I was saying to Gloria, for quite a number of years, the lines have been blurred. And to separate the two, administrative and politics, at local government, does seems to be a daunting task. But I also think in line with how you try as a country to integrate and legislate the same way an urban municipality and a rural municipality doesn't seem to be working. You find a 4 million house in a rural municipality which doesn't pay rates and taxes. And you find a small house in Soweto which is bonded, co-proteated land, and the person is hammered to pay rates and taxes. Because your act for assessment rates and property rates is regulated in Soweto and is assumed that everybody who stays in Gen First Sukukune is poor and will remain poor and deserves subsidy. So there's quite a lot of distinction that actually doesn't liberate a woman in particular, because if you are saying there's growth of ownership in properties owned by women, so which means directly taxes from municipalities comes from women. So we've got to look at the laws and interpret them directly to say, if you are empowering, what can government then say, which seems to promote a woman not to pay the same assessment rates or property rates as a man or as a business, for example. Yes, of course, with regard to business, there is that distinction. But if you are for promotion of women and ensuring that you create the safety net for society, government needs to begin to think along those lines. Maybe let me conclude by saying Stats SA says 56% households are headed by women. So if you translate that, it will then show you how much support as women we need from government in terms of legislation.
A mouthful of serious information that we need to tackle, and what you say about the local government side of tackling that issue speaks also to the banking system, the financial system in South Africa. Sister Thembis, how do we then empower the South African woman who obviously has for many years traditionally running the household? Are we doing that at this point?
To me, I think a lot still needs to be done. And there are lots of dynamics that have been mentioned. I know when Sis Gloria talks about this informal versus formal, I know it's something that's very passionate and close to her heart. So if we look at the financial services and the banking system, it has traditionally been structured for a certain sector of the market. And that sector was probably predominantly formal. It's a sector that understood people in a certain way. And if we look at, for example, the formal economy and the informal economy, there are very many differences that we cannot treat those economies the same. So, for example, if you look at women that are left in rural areas, what are their assets? And how do you define their assets? And do we, as financial services, recognize those assets? When they get involved in agriculture or some manufacturing of sort, what are the things that we ask of them before we fund them? So that's just from an enterprise perspective. But when you look from a, Swazi will speak about employee perspective, how do you actually ensure that women are included in a meaningful way, whether it's through your rules and policies in the organization? I mean, I've worked in different industries, and there are industries that when you walk in, they are predominantly male. And you feel as a woman and as a black woman, you've got double challenges. You've got a challenge of being black, you've got a challenge of being a woman, and you almost have to prove yourself. When I started in the financial service in Old Mutual, I was coming from the retail. There was a joke about, we don't sell baked beans here. So it is those nuances, and you sit and you think, I wonder if this would have been said, you know, if I was a male. But we are doing a lot. And I'm sure we will have an opportunity to talk about some of the good things that we have done at Old Mutual in actually recognizing the fact that we need to drive women inclusion, including partnering with WIPHOLD organization in acknowledging the fact that their understanding of the rural is going to be beneficial to us as the financial services industry. So I think a lot it still needs to be done, even in terms of what are the skill sets, what are the products, how do you understand the consumer? Is the consumer the same? I mean, South Africa is a very difficult economy. If someone I grew up in Guguletu, I stayed in the Eastern Cape, I now live in Joburg. I'm a different person throughout those stages of my life. And those are the grapples, those are the things that we grapple with as financial services, to understand that someone who's in a township is different to somebody who is in the rural places. And in terms of access of products, and in terms of delivery of those products, and just the products themselves need to talk to those dynamics.
It must be lovely, though, to look back at those who said, "Are you selling baked beans?" And that's a twist that I like. No, Swazi, for you, you are a young executive, and in the human capital space, you actually get to see the intake of young graduates that come into a work environment. For black females, are you seeing the same type of challenges that have been raised so far?
So I think over time there has been a shift, and we've got to acknowledge that. I think that there have been changes in corporate South Africa, but I think by and large some of the challenges are still the same. What I am enjoying seeing is young women come in and seize the opportunities in a way that our parents never could. I am enjoying seeing the women know what they want and go after it, and having the systems in place to back them. I think the challenges are still there, and I think that it's part of our role, and not just men, to remove some of the barriers that are in place, to start to work through some of the ceiling that we always talk about. So jargon we use talking about a glass ceiling. As women and male, inclusivity is not just, it's not a male's job, it's everybody's job, who has the power, who has the access at their disposal to create those opportunities for younger women. So I am seeing more and more women come into the workplace. I think I'm seeing more and more women move up the corporate ladder. I do think there's work to do, though, so I don't think we can get complacent about it. I think we need to be very deliberate about it. And I think that in being deliberate, we then can start to work through, and it's not just a numbers thing. For me, it's bigger than a target. It's about inclusion. It's about you coming into the workplace and feeling like you can be yourself and contribute meaningfully, without having any biases against you, without feeling like you have to be something different when you walk into the workplace to succeed. So I think the challenges are still there. We continue to work through them, and I think it's the responsibility almost of everyone to kind of work through some of those barriers.
I absolutely agree with you, and I like what you are saying in that it's not a numbers game, which speaks to Mamnonkulego, the platform that you have taken upon to start the social discourse of a systematic way of having direct conversations about inclusion, representation, and also for us to stand up and refuse some of the nonsensical discourse that is thrown our way as black women when we do actually stand up and talk about it. In your view, are we having the right conversations currently in South Africa? Because at times they can tend to be misdirected, especially when there isn't an understanding of what message is it that we are trying to put out there as black South African professional women that are not only professionals for ourselves, but to benchmark for 10 other generations that are going to at least have the resources to be in a school, to be in tertiary, to get to a corporate ladder.
Yeah, I think this is what I'm grappling with, and we must acknowledge the fact that we've made progress. I mean, we're sitting here today because of that progress, and we cannot deny that opportunities that we have enjoyed were not available to our mothers But my worry is that I think we've been having superficial conversations. And if you are having superficial conversations, you don't get to the core of the problem. And the core of the problem is that women have a right also to be who they truly are. They have a right also, to find their true identity. Because they've been labeled and they've been put in a box and they have been told to sit in this box and don't you dare come out of this box. When you dare, you are trying to be yourself. They may say that you are soft, you know, you can't make tough decisions and so on. If you are a strong personality like myself, they give you all sorts of names, Iron Lady, and all of that, because it is okay for a man to be a strong personality and push things, but it is not okay for a woman. So I'm just tired of the fact that when are women going to find who they truly are? Because remember, myths were created around women that they are weak, they are inferior, they belong in the kitchen, they can't vote, you know, they can't even manage their own affairs. So those myths, unfortunately, they are the biases that we face every day because we're always seen in terms of that box. And women are not being allowed to be who they truly are because of fear. If I look at let's take an extreme case, gender-based violence. When I look at this increase and rise in gender-based violence, what I see is women who are breadwinners in a family or relationship supporting a man that is not working. Now, the man's identity is being threatened when you are the breadwinner. And so, because now he doesn't know who he is when he's not the breadwinner, he uses what he has, brute force, to show you that you may be bringing the bread, but I'm strong and you are weak, and I'm going to show you that you are weak. And this is all fear. And I'm saying, why should women be held to ransom because of fear? It's the same with black people. We were put in this box with all of these myths that were created around us of being savages, and that's why we white people will be afraid when a black person takes over, because there's this fear of security around us, and that we're inferior and all of that. The problem is that black people and women have become those myths, unfortunately. That's why you get to the corporate and you think you don't belong. It is the man who belongs there. I don't really belong. I'm a visitor and I must sit in my box. It is the same with black people, because they've been told that they are inferior and they feel that they are not worthy. When I looked at the Fees Must Fall, I was just so hurt that our children have to fight to be recognized that they belong at VETS. Kanjani, VETS is a public institution. There's no one who belongs there more than the other. So this inclusion is a real thing. It is a real thing, because inclusion doesn't mean I'm in a position. Inclusion means I have a right to be at the table and I'm recognized and my views are taken seriously and I'm accepted. This is what we want to see. Because how are women and black people ever going to reach their full potential if now they have to nurse these fears of people who are afraid of losing their privilege? Right? And so we're just dealing with fear here, and it's just unfair that black people and women are not allowed to find their true identity, because the one that they play is a pseudo one. So my message is not to white people or men or anything like that. My message is to black people and women, because they're the ones who must release themselves from all of these layers and layers that have been put upon them.
Thank you so much for that. It is loaded. An emotional topic that, again, we shy away from. And Mom Gloria, you raised it in your initial remarks. And when we talk about the systemic culture of, in rural areas, women are far more excluded in the economic landscape of South Africa than we are in the burbs, for lack of a better description of where we are, the leafy suburbs of the north. But at the same time, there needs to be a shift in thinking. Having those conversations amongst ourselves may look and sound progressive. To what level do we have a discussion to a point where, for an example, with what WIPHOLD did to include women who were domestic workers into the financial playing field? Those conversations are happening way before what we are seeing on this panel. They are sometimes maybe even unnoticed.
So I think it comes back to that thing about it's going to involve all manner of things: policy making, advocacy, the actual doing, and step by step, right? So the big thing for me is that if I talk about WIPHOLD, we needed to take the fight to where it belongs and get on with it. And there's two areas I will mention there. The first one is that as a sector, we deliberately wanted to be in financial services sector. And that is because the world, all of it, the drivers of economy, the people who dictate what happens, is the banks, is the retirement funds, is the life companies, those three. Anywhere in the world, all over the world. And so WIPHOLD deliberately wanted to be in that space in a meaningful way because we wanted to be part of the dictation. And so our excitement about being in the Old Mutual group, which had life business, it had the banking business, and it had the short-term insurance. It had all these things that I'm talking about. The excitement was not about the deal itself, was our active involvement. In fact, we are the only transaction where there was a particular agreement put together in terms of who we are in it. It's not about sitting in the boards. There were specific things that we put on the table that is why we want to be in this sector. And one of those, and we chose deliberately, this excluded part of the economy, which is the low income, which is the women, which is the rural. And we said, Old Mutual, we will take you wherever you want us to take you because we understand it. And in fairness, that's exactly what happened. We dragged them kicking and screaming everywhere, all over the country, Nedbank, Old Mutual, and Federal. The reason we were doing that, we wanted them to go to these people to design products according to who they are, as opposed to the other way around. And so many things came out of that. I won't go into that detail, but a lot of success came out of that. But there is one other area where we said the domestic workers, they are not covered in any retirement form. All of it. We all have mothers who worked as domestic workers. When they retire, they are retired. That's the end of the story. And we use the intellectual capital of Old Mutual to design a retirement system for the domestic workers. This country didn't have that. And to do that, we had to create this umbrella fund, because the reason they are not part of any system is because they move from this worker to that worker to that worker. They don't have one big worker who does. So we designed a system such that when they move from this worker to that worker, it gets transferred. They continue, and all of that kind of thing. That was a massive game changer for the country. And we worked with the Domestic Workers Union to actually achieve that. And it was achieved. But to do that, we wanted the Old Mutual system to make it work, because it still is a financial system.
Yeah.
And so that was achieved. Where else we wanted to be, WIPHOLD is quite happy to be a disruptor because we love that. We just want to disrupt.
Love it.
And one of those sectors, for example, we wanted to disrupt is the agriculture. It is notorious for excluding women specifically. And we were deliberate about that. And so what did we do? We decided we will go to where no big investor goes, the communal land. Because the communal land has no title deed, there's an excuse about not investing there, and all of that kind of thing. Hence, that land is lying fallow, and all of that. And then the traditional leaders have an illusion of owning it at the same time. We decided to go right there and actually take that head on. And in doing that, high risk strategy, no doubt, but guess with who? With Old Mutual, Nedbank, and MNF again. We went because you want the force behind you to actually undo this drastic thing. In doing that, what we ended up having now is what I would call a very successful rural agriculture, whatever, but inadvertently, then we bump into this thing of women and the ownership of land. And the disaster of when they are widowed, then the brother of the husband takes everything, and all of that whole chaos there. And so we use that process to rearrange that. We brought the widows back into their land. And then there's another thing in the rural areas which nobody knows. People don't divorce there. A man just goes and stays in that other house there. So you find there's these women who are hanging around now. Nobody cares, but it's happening. But it's not on paper. And through this agriculture project, we rearranged that too. And we brought the man back financially.
Yes.
Into where he's supposed to be. If he has got 2 wives, let him split his money into 2 houses. Because in the rural areas, it's not in writing and all of that kind of thing. The sum total of that exercise is that 62% of that program, the land is under women. Because we rebased, thank you. We rebased that data, but it took us like 4 years to get it right. But it took us 4 years of a meaningful discussion with the traditional leaders in terms of mindful that, like any bully, they don't want to be caught. And once it's on the table, let's discuss it. It is wrong, let's change it. And fair enough, it was changed. So it's 62% women land owned now because that's... So I'm just saying that we need these balances but we have to be deliberate. We have to be daring to go to where nobody wants to go. So Nonguleko attempts to be a wise man Kuhlu when actually she is his student. And of course she becomes the first woman CA. That's why we don't want to let go of that title because it talks at exactly what it means to just go to exactly nobody wants you to go to and take on that system and make it work. And maybe the one failure we probably can talk about is our generation, Nonkulego, we have to accept it. We had the benefit of the role models, the political role models. We could touch them by hand, we could talk to them, we could see what struggle they've been. Our younger professionals, we are not having that conversation. We are throwing them in the deep end. We're not having meaningful conversations. They don't know that they are in a war zone. They quickly become, I'm here on merit. And I think we just have to go back to that conversation and say, it's a war zone. Yeah, it's a war zone, but yes, be pretty, get married, have children, do all these things, but it's a war zone. But don't fight any man you see in front of you, not all of them are against you. And maybe that's the weakness. That's the thing that I think we should actually deal with in the system. Thank you.
Wow. Very solid on the side of significant change with product offerings. Thembisile, this is where you come in. Partnering and being a game changer, particularly in spaces where women exist. We do actually have to have a conversation about tailor-making product offerings in the financial service for a Black South African female, not only in corporate, but everywhere else in the dynamics of the South African culture. How do we even start to devise a tailor-made solution, if there is anything like that in the current discourse? Because essentially, as you indicated earlier, is that South Africa is too vast, too dynamic. We speak of women who are powerful in many ways, but at the same time, our strengths are not the same, and we don't play in the same sandpit too. For Old Mutual, they've been successes, and the challenge that Gloria has spoken about. Can we even achieve a direct implementation of a product that speaks to a South African woman?
Yes, to me, but before we get to a classical product, I think for me the issue of inclusion actually talks to empowerment. And where financial services is concerned, the first place to empower is education. One of the big things we have done at Old Mutual is to drive a very robust financial literacy program. And there is a myth that financial literacy is an issue of education.
Yeah.
It actually isn't. We hear stories of very educated people who die without a will. And you ask yourself, why? To some of the issues that Sis Gloria raised, there are people who have got more than one wives. How do you draw an estate for those particular people? So one of the things we actually did about 13 years ago was to start a financial literacy program that was designed for all people, whether you are high net worth or you are someone who lives within the poverty line. Because even when you think about the underserved market, they actually are the ones who commit grievous financial mistakes with the little that they have. Let's talk about the stokvel.
Yeah.
I always have this thing, Stats always talks about South Africa is not saving. And I think that's very true when we use our traditional lens of saving, of long-term wealth creation. But there is a saving phenomenon which is unique to South Africa, called the stokvel. And we all know that the big part of that phenomenon is ladies. So one of the things we've actually done is to partner with stokvel society members to actually educate them on what are the different vehicles of investments, so that this money is not only driven for consumption. Because the issue of inclusion is not only about developing a product and you consume and then what? It's also about wealth creation. So my cousin has got taxis. I know he's not a woman.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm sure there are women taxi owners out there. They have a stokvel that rotates 150 every week. So I can imagine how much he gets or how much he makes a year. So I ask, what do you do with this money? Goes to consumption. So that's what I think has been a big success of us, the financial inclusion. So we've developed, as Gloria has mentioned, the domestic workers product. And we've adapted because we learned, these things of there's a transient employee relationship, which is different to the employee benefit products that we know of. Then there's the issue of digital adoption, which I think presents a big opportunity in driving the empowerment of women. And we've done a lot around the digital adoption and making sure that when we serve rural people, which are predominantly women, we actually use digital servicing. So if you come from my village, to get to town, you need 100 rands.
Sure.
So you can imagine my grandmother, who's a social grant earner, every time she needs to go to town, she must pay 100 rands, maybe to change a beneficiary.
Yeah.
So these are some of the innovative ways that we have tried to help inclusion for the people that are underserved, and not necessarily really around there is a particular product for them. But these are the things that really talk to them. We've got a distributors trust, which was also formed about 2007, Black Distributors Trust, which is also a unit that is empowering Black people and helping them in setting up small businesses. And what that does, it actually facilitates small brokerages instead of these big powerhouses, so that you've got more Black entrepreneurs. And sadly, I must say that the adoption there still is very male-dominated. But I think there's an opportunity there to actually say, can we get female franchises that distribute financial services product? So I guess the challenge to me is not only about the product to consume, it's about the service delivery, the distribution of the product, as well as creation of wealth.
Absolutely. What both Sister Thembisa and Gloria have spoken about, Councillor Nkadimeng, is issues of being legislated, having a blueprint to work from. And we must talk politics. In the spaces that you work in, can we really say there's political will to get that done in the South African political landscape?
Well, I think if there's one part we've excelled in, will be that. But there's a difference in terms of legislation and implementing. And we belong into the first box. We legislate. Very beautiful pieces of legislation. Some of them, of course, we go far away and learn and assume that the system will be ripe enough and the system will mature fast enough to be able to be customized and to be a South African system. I mean, one of the greatest failures of local government is that the expectation in today's business and everything is that the IDP, which is what we call a blueprint of what guides a municipality, my expectation is still for people to gather at a particular hall and tell me, Mayor, I want a road, or that road has a pothole, or there's precisely because we thought participatory governance is a good way, which is enshrined through our ensuring that people talk to government and government listen to its people. But the fact of the matter is, it's a jungle. You wake up, you have got to think about dropping children at school, you come back, this target is behind this report and that. So you precisely do not have the time at 7 o'clock for Mayor Nkadimeng calling somewhere. Because if you are preparing dinner, hubby is helping children to write homework. And that's the end of the day. So we need to find legislations where we don't legislate and pause. Our legislation is too slow to transform. What paper on local government was written in 1994? I mean 1997, 2020 today. It's no longer talking to what we have. Why do you have to pick up a phone or knock at the municipal building? Rather than taking a picture of a pothole, our GIS system will be up to scratch, our Wi-Fi, you just send it and it tells me corner, whatever and whatever. and I go and service it immediately. Possibly you could be able to do that. But what do I want in my 205 municipalities? Dear caller, it's not feasible, it's not practical. Is the person on the other line available, by the way? It rings non-end. It's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But the second part of legislating and pausing is actually greatly manifested in our local economic development, on how provincial and national government legislate and expect local government to implement. Because yes, we are supposed to make the environment convenient. Since Gloria doesn't want to run a business where there's no road, where there's no electricity, it just does not attract. And we have to provide that. But why do I say we don't build on what we have? And Seskuli has spoken about not really dealing with the tangible discussion itself. My mom raised us cooking at the corner and selling food. Yeah. And then you sit and you say, that's a veggie corner, it's good. And then a municipality puts, without talking to anybody, puts a taxi rank there and puts stalls. 2 weeks down the line, the taxis are parked the other side. The granny who's cooking is outside of that, is on the other side. And what do me and you who are transformed call them? No, unhygienic food. Instead of saying, if she has been able to produce Nguli as the first chartered accountant, apega amagwinya ekoneni, how best do I make sure that the policy enhance, starting from the foundation of what has been seen to be working? Because here she has got 6, 7 children. No business model, no formula. She developed it herself. She looked at the people, at the patents and everything, which is what we want today and we call due diligence. And she stands at a strategic corner and do that and sell. But what will my bailout do? After every second week, there's my municipal truck with police taking that pot and throwing it away because we want to force her to go and sit under a particular tree. And that's where the legislation seems to fail. If you go to National Treasury quickly and say, here is an opportunity of boys, they are washing cars. Here, they found the spot. Let me support them now. You will say, advertise the tender. Adjudicate the tender. So it forces you to even bring the person who does not have an interest in washing cars and has no art of doing that. But the system is so detailed and so punitive that you have got to go through that way to make it a success. At the end of it all, you subsidize a farmer of a person who doesn't want to farm. Right. And then you say co-ops don't work. Contrary to when you find one successful young person who's farming and comes at the municipality and say, your farm is empty. Give me 20 hectares. I will see how to finish. Give him the benefit of the doubt because he already has bags of potatoes. Don't call for people who don't even know how to produce a potato and say, fit into the system so that the system can produce. And that is where this corruption comes from. You are going to subsidize a person who doesn't have the interest. Even if you give a tractor manure and everything, at the end, everything disappears and there's no potato at the end of the day. And that's our story.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I can't disagree with that. And it's a conversation that touches on the terminology that we use at times in the finance world of formal and non-formal. With COVID-19, we actually saw a lot of small businesses losing out on much-needed funding solely because they're not bankable. And what does that speak to? Not being documented. We carry on this conversation right here on Power Business. It's the special broadcast of the Old Mutual Women in Finance. Stay tuned after the break. We come back.
Which seeks to empower institutions that enable Africa's development. We deliver evidence-based solutions to complex institutional problems. We are subject matter experts in revenue value chain optimization, business performance improvement, and industrialization consulting. Visit ndisoconsulting.co.za. Ndiso Consulting. Truth, trust, results.
Attention all shoppers. Simplify your search for great service providers and traders on YEP, the newest online marketplace. View businesses near you like plumbers, locksmiths. Woo, he looks great. Electricians and so much more. All local, all vetted and all star rated. To ensure you get the best of great, simply download YEP from the App Store and find great today. Terms and conditions apply. Calling Chip Nail at front desk. Nail tech needed.
Power News.
In your top stories this hour, former President Jacob Zuma is yet to submit a formal application for the recusal of the Zondo inquiry head, and EFF leader Julius Malema seeks to remind his supporters that the party is a non-racial organization. Good evening, I'm Ananda Khomo. Former President Jacob Zuma's legal team is yet to submit an official application for the recusal of State Capture Commission head Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. This ahead of his scheduled appearance at the Zondo inquiry next month. Today saw the response from Zondo on allegations by Zuma that there are historical relations between them, which has led to the talk of bias against him. In a statement issued this afternoon, Zondo has admitted to having a child in the early 1990s with the sister to Zuma's now estranged wife, Thobeka Madiba. Zuma alluded to this as one of the reasons why he believes Zondo should recuse himself when he testifies. Power News reporter Komojo Mabalane has more.
Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo says the fact that he fathered a child with the sister to Zuma's estranged wife has no bearing on his judicial functions. He says his relationship with Thobeka Madiba's sister ended long before Madiba married the former president. Earlier this month, Zuma was subpoenaed to the commission after he failed to appear on several occasions. His lawyers have indicated that a formal application will be brought to the commission before Zuma's expected appearance next month for the chairperson of the commission to recuse himself. Zondo says he has presided over several matters involving the former president over the years and that Zuma has never brought forward any complaint or made an application for his recusal. Komocho Mabelani, Power News, Johannesburg.
Tomorrow will see the resumption of high-profile bail applications in the courts. Judgment is expected in the appeal by former Bosasa COO Angelo Agrizzi in a failed bail bid in the Commercial Crimes Court. His bail was denied earlier this month when it emerged he had transferred significant amounts of money to an offshore account which he had not disclosed to the courts. He was therefore deemed a flight risk despite his poor health condition, which has since landed him in hospital. The NPA's Thembisile Nkadimeng has more.
The High Court of South Africa, Gauteng Local Division in Johannesburg, will tomorrow hand down judgment on the bail appeal of former Bosasa Chief Operations Officer Angelo Agrizzi. Agrizzi has been incarcerated since the 14th of October after the Palm Ridge Specialized Crimes Court refused him bail. On the 15th of October, he was admitted to hospital. The investigating directorate argued that his release from bail could result in him possibly evading trial.
At the same time, enlightened Christian church leader Shepherd Bushiri and his co-accused will find out tomorrow whether they are to be granted bail. He and his wife, along with another co-accused, were arrested on fraud and money laundering charges amounting to just over 100 million rand. Speaking to Power News outside the Pretoria Magistrates Court where Bushiri appeared on Monday, scores of his supporters converged on the church demanding
I'm who I am because of Major One and prophetism.
I don't care what people say, what they think about him. Only thing that I know about him, he taught me Bible.
And still on court-related matters, EFF leader Julius Malema and MP Mbuyiseni Ndlovu are expected back in the Randburg Magistrates Court in March. The common assault case against them entered its second day of trial today with the complainant, Colonel Johannes Venter, grilled about his testimony, which alleges Malema Ndlovu violently pushed him at the 2018 funeral of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela when he refused them entry into the cemetery. Malema addressed EFF members outside court and responded to the backlash over the use of a white legal representative in the case. That's following criticism on social media on the pair's appointment of Advocate Lawrence Hodes.
We are not an anti-white organization. We are a non-racial organization. And our stand against white racists is not against white people. We do not want racists. Everywhere we meet racists, we deal with them decisively. But where we meet patriotic white South Africans who love their country, who love their constitution, who want to share the wealth and the land with their own people, they are more than welcome.
In your weather for tomorrow, sunny conditions are expected across Gauteng, Johannesburg and Vereeniging to peak at 32 degrees, while Pretoria is expected to peak at 34. Recapping the top story in Power News this hour, former President Jacob Zuma's legal team is yet to submit an official application for the recusal of State Capture Commission head Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo.
Power News.
We're in this together. Doing our part to keep you informed, healthy, and safe. Power 98.7, your COVID-19 information station. Power
Business with Tumisang Ndlovu.
Monday to Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. and Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m. on Power 98.7.
Welcome back to the special broadcast of Power Business right here on Power 98.7. We are also simulcast on our sister station, Capricorn FM. We are hosting the Old Mutual Women in Finance Dialogue, and we continue our discussion right here with our panel. Mamnonkulego Koboto, met Gloria Serobe, Councillor Nkadimeng. We also have Nomaswazi Ngwane, as well as Thembisile Nkadimeng, who is from Old Mutual. When we continue this conversation, I actually want to get a view from Nomaswazi first. And this view, I ask of it to bounce back to Mam Koboto about a recent issue that made us, as young black female professionals, very uncomfortable because we were being target marketed in a very controversial manner. The Clicks debacle, of course, I'm talking about that. On this panel earlier on, a lot was said about being, you can be pretty, you can be married, you can run the household, but it's a war zone out there. Oh, yes. And that particular saga, like many others that have come before, have proven that we are in war. Yeah. How do you reflect or relate to target marketing, how you are approached as a young black woman in a professional space?
I think for me, it's twofold. I like what Gloria said and the reminder that you're in a war zone, because I think at a point in time, when you reach a certain level, you tend to forget. And I think you need to constantly have that reminder about the role that you have to play and that you actually are in a war zone and need to constantly be at the forefront of the narrative that we're talking about. I think that being in that war zone for me then also means, what do I then do to support other women? It talks to what power or what access or what do I have at my disposal that I can use to position myself so that I can be of help to others and enable others. I think it is quite important that we don't forget the narrative, and I think as a black woman you find it twofold. You don't want to find yourself wanting in an environment where you are just a token. So you are the pretty face. You speak the good English. So you then become the face of something. And I think it is making sure, I like what Menkuli said, who spoke about having the right to be at that table, having a seat at that table, having a voice at that table, and meaningfully contributing. So for me, I think owning that space, and once you have that opportunity, is to use it, and you can't be caught sleeping or wanting on the job. And it goes back to that war zone. I was in the break, I was sharing that, this war zone analogy for me, it clicked something again. And you need those constant reminders, you need the conversations, you need to be engaging with people that have been through the struggle. So it's very easy for me to say, yeah, there's work to be done, but I think connecting and finding networks where I can talk to the likes of Gloria, the likes of the first black chartered accountant for me, is important, and it helps keep the vision alive and helps keep what we're trying to drive alive. So I think, again, having a seat at the table, using that seat at the table meaningfully, and it's not just about being pretty and representing whatever an organization dictates for you. It's about meaningfully using that to shift the narrative, to shift mindsets, and to be controversial. I mean, it's hard to be controversial. It's hard to be a disruptor. But we want to be that, and I think it's about constantly pushing yourself into that space. It's about constantly thinking about, we need to, you made a point about thinking about our children.
Yeah.
And I think that for us also then is important. I think we need to start thinking about, what do I want my children, my grandchildren to have behind? Do I want them to go through the struggles that I, as Nomaswazi, am going through today as a woman? And I don't think I want that I definitely don't want that for them. And yeah, I think just using the power that you have currently to open those doors, and whether it is through mentorship, whether it is through the conversations, influencing and having that voice in the room. I was sharing a story again during the break about being in a situation a couple of years, not getting a role, and being told it was because, the only reason I didn't get it was because I didn't have a voice in my absence. So when I was not in the room, there was no one speaking on my behalf. And I think for me that broke me at that time, but it was also a big life lesson and a big moment of truth for me in understanding the role that I have to play as a Black woman. And in terms of the things that I do achieve, what I then do to make it easier for those that come behind me.
Absolutely correct. That saga Manunkulego Koboto hit us at a point where we didn't expect it. We know these things happen in advertising. We get branded in ways that we do not agree with. You had that seat on the table. You again raised your voice and said, I no longer want the seat on the table. We've often chuckled about the dynamics of how we are going to have a particular conversation. And when we had that conversation with you on Power Business over the phone, off air, I actually said, but why should she even justify herself on Twitter? Whereas nobody is giving you a voice to speak about why it is you first took that stand to speak on behalf of that company and subsequently left the room. Thank you and bye.
Oh Lord, please help me. When am I ever going to be let go over this thing?
Mama.
Anyway, I was speaking to women at Shell yesterday. That was one of the first questions. When it came to question time, I was like, no, let's answer this question. Anyway, you've got to understand, now I'm a leader, right? And as a leader, when there is a crisis, I can't just sit back. Not much on social media, but messages were coming on my WhatsApp. Nongu, your CEO doesn't get it. People were hurting, and for me, I hate injustice. The fact that Clicks was being blamed from this whole thing, and Transkei and Unilever were getting off scot-free was just bothersome to me. So when I offered, I really offered genuinely, and they were hesitant to say this can be misunderstood, But I was like, no, we can't just sit back and do nothing. So I went all out as a leader and all of that. And indeed, the storm was calm. People, you could just see the soothing of that hurt, because I was talking as a Black woman, also having been offended deeply by this advert. And then when you reflect afterwards, I'm like, I've taken a stand against racism and prejudice against women. How can I continue on a board of a company that has been blamed for this thing? I struggled with this thing. I struggled for a few days. And then I approached them and I said, no, I'm resigning. So you can imagine, they feel like, we've just come to storm, please, please, you're going to create more problems. So I said, okay, I'll sleep on it. For me, in terms of values, I'm willing to be flexible, right? But I've drawn a line around racism and prejudice. And for me, I don't want to cross that line. And remaining on a board that has been blamed for the very thing that I'm saying I'm taking a stand against. I just couldn't do it. I felt like a hypocrite. So on Monday, I didn't even speak to anybody. I wrote straight to the company secretary so that, because when they receive the letter, they have to react now. There's no more begging or anything like that. So it was all about values. And that thing shook me to the core, because that's why, I've started this organization called Awakened, because I think we need to awaken to these things we've been dialed to. That there was a team, the black people, white people, when the decision was made to put up the advert. And how they thought that advert was normal.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, how is that even possible? And then I think about the people who commissioned and then produced the advert. I'm sure there were black people in that team. How do you sign off as part of this team and say this advert is normal? So that's why we need to awaken to these things we've been dialed to, and face the truth about this thing. I wanted to be able to go out there and talk about Awakened without having, this clicks thing behind me. First of all, besides the lies on Twitter, which I don't care about, people were disappointed that I've left and I'm not going to then work on transforming cliques. I'm like, please don't dream small dreams for me of transforming cliques. What I want to transform is corporate South Africa and beyond.
Yeah.
Please. Even when they were begging me, they were saying, we need you to transform. I'm like, please, that's your job. I'm confident that you'll be able to, you have a wake-up call. My burden is about, we have to change this world where a black person can be part of putting an advert like that, so that you become aware when things like that happen. So I've written this book. Guys, I'm so excited about my book.
Yeah.
Because, I didn't want to write an inspirational book, because we've had those. I've had a life of ups and downs. How do I have Nomaswazi to know that there is a life of ups and downs, right? And so that book, I'm vulnerable. I'm talking about the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, so that you can know that when she fell pregnant at 17, and the father and mother said, you are getting married, Gloria was there.
Yeah.
We are getting married. We are not going to have an illegitimate child. But out of that, having been an introvert and shy and all of that, and now I'm working at this panel between short of my father, a gap year, having a baby. And then I find there were two white guys who are running this business, fed up that they have a black boss. I was able to stand up to these guys, bullies. I didn't report them to my father. I dealt with them myself. I was actually smart. Wow, I'm smart.
Yes.
I'm not this thing that my mother was worried about. Hey, this one is not going to make it in life. So that Nomaswazi can know that those mistakes are good, because you find who you are. You suddenly you have Professor auditing, and you find out about the chartered accountancy, and you find your path in life, So this book is doing things like that. And please don't ask me when it's coming out. I finished the book, it's the publishers. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to awaken to this environment we've tolerated. We don't need anybody's permission to find our own true identity instead of the lies that we've been fed and we've been trying to fit into. And I know that it's not easy. That's why in that book I'm talking about just healing the psychological wounds of brokenness, even in the family. Although I grew up in a mother and father family, there was brokenness there that affected me psychologically. So that my grandchildren do not grow up in broken families, because my mother and my father were broken. So this thing is being transferred from generation to generation. We have to deal with these things. We have to deal with the psychological wounds of apartheid. We have to deal with these things. We've not been allowed to talk about them because it's too, let's cover them, Let's give you these jobs and these businesses. Please, let's not talk about them. But until we heal from those things, we can't find who we truly are.
Yeah.
And we cannot get to our full potential where we run our own country and we are allowed to do it.
Thank you very much. Can't wait to delve into that book. It's going to be quite a read.
Oh, yes.
Mam Gloria, when are you penning a book? And I ask this because you started with this narrative of having to balance the home, the life, being married, having the children, and being a powerhouse. It's a tricky balance. And what COVID-19 has actually done to the South African economy has laid bare where we struggle because the burden is on us. You have to cook, entertain the little children, and still go be amazing at work. So with the Solidarity Fund and trying to find a landscape or a narrative that we tell when we get out of this, whenever that is going to be, how do we emerge with a different story to tell, one that doesn't leave us scarred and battered?
Well, all right. I think my favorite part of what you just said is this work-life, home, family balance kind of thing. I'm a bit traditional on this one. And I know that you guys don't like this.
You're looking at me.
I do think that it is not a bad idea to plan to be married and start a family in that form and make it work. It's very important. In the midst of, and I clash with the modern young people on this, because in the midst of this, we're also, the brokenness of apartheid went deep into family brokenness. We've got broken families, comes from way back. The mining, the mining people leaving their wives behind, and then children who are not quite theirs now, and there's a system there to make it work. The horror of the rural stories about families is quite frightening, because that whole migration thing of separating these people is really what is part of the basis of our not so strong as families. So there's something there as part of this big building we are busy with. The professional, the women inclusion, and whatever. One of those for me, and I benefited from that, coming from a strong family. Father, mother. And father, mother may not be your mother, your father, but a home with that kind of system. I think we must encourage that. We have to encourage that. For the young professionals, I'm also keen to say that it is not a difficult thing to do. I don't think this husband spent 24 hours in a day trying to bash you as a professional. There's a time where he still thinks he loves you a hell of a lot.
Yeah, sure.
And there's that time where he thinks, he's too big-headed now. I'm going to show her. But, there's the big thing about cooking for him is not a big thing. We can't feel like slaves in this thing. It's normal. Cook for him. Cook for him. Feed him. Do those things that your mother did. Just make sure that this is now not made you to be a slave. Also, you enjoy it. But also negotiate. When I negotiate, I'm not saying plead. Negotiate your independence at the same time. You have to have your own time. You have to have your own stockpile. You have to have your own free time. You have to have your own wishes. I go on holiday with my husband. And we do give ourselves a time where he does his own thing, I do my own thing, because he likes museums, I don't. I like shopping, he doesn't.
Yeah.
So let's just have this wonderful holiday and we come back very happy.
Yeah.
I just think that some things we should not fight them in advance. Rather, I think we can negotiate them in advance. When it comes to having children, it is fair to say that you cannot be full-time with your children while you're also a professional. But most houses need 2 salaries now.
Yes.
It is actually a necessity to have 2 salaries. And there's no husband who objects to this second salary. And so somewhere, I think with the children, it's a case of also make them aware that mommy is not going to make it to your ballet dance tonight. But love you, she does.
Yeah.
And it is meant for you. And children are very, do have the perspective. Do the deal with them. Just don't do the habit then of not just showing up. And she keeps looking behind the pillar, where's mommy? And thinking that you'll be here and all that. Sit down with her in the morning that I will not make it today. I have a Solidarity Fund board meeting.
Yeah.
And all of that kind of thing. But I think we should give a deliberate attention to this thing of building homes, building families. Where I clash with the young people, they say it doesn't have to be with a man. Of course, I don't know now, so many things these days.
Kumandi.
But I'm just saying, can we just also pay attention to this thing of building homes, of building families? It's not about salaries that I can afford it. I can take my child to Rodin. I don't need him. It is not about that. It is about provide this child with the very same thing that you were provided with, which was a home with mother, father in the house, uncle, whatever, and all that kind of thing. It's very important. Our value system is broken partly because the homes are not manned correctly. And I think we have to be very careful about this and just make it work. But I know when I leave out of this room, I'm going to be in trouble.
You won't be in trouble with me, don't worry.
Okay, yeah. But I think on a serious note, and then I think next to that is the whole world. Once WIPHOLD understood that the fact that women are the majority in the world has not translated itself to shifting the power space. And we then also thought that finance is the power on the table. And we have got to make sure that we are shifting the financial power to women where we can. What I mean by that is currently with WIPHOLD, there's 4 sectors where no decision is made and WIPHOLD's opinion is not on the table. It won't go through.
That's powerful.
And we've been deliberate about those sectors. It has been financial services. It is the construction cement industry, very conservative. It is agriculture. Those 3, there is no conversation in this country that will start and end, and WIPHOLD's view is not on the table.
Wow.
And so it's a combination of make it work for the young professionals, make it work for those entrepreneurs that want to get there, make it work for those who are just at sea. When you come to rural areas, until these women, you talk to them, they don't know they are in trouble. They think that's how it was designed, that's how the world was designed. Make it work for them too. And I think that is our role at this point. And back to our young professionals, we just have to remind them again and again that there's a war out there. We have to be part of it, be peaceful about it at the same time, because it's too early for us to be bashing men. And it's a battle that's not quite won positively. In some cases and in most of cases, we have to cooperate and work with them. The resources are sitting somewhere. You have to be calculative as well, and not be blasé about this bashing and stuff like that. But I think the main thing here for me is that let's build homes, let's build families, because that part too is broken, and it's broken desperately.
Thank you so much for that. I think we actually needed that softer touch. We spoke about the hues in this room and how they speak to our soul, and that's exactly what you just did to many women who may be feeling like, do I have the scale on the right balance, or which agenda am I pushing in my household or in corporate? Before I invite the producer of Power Business, Nolthando Mthonti, to give us the questions that we've been taking on social media networks, I would like us to just take this question off the table, but you can take a seat in the meantime, Nolthando. Thembisile, this question around the formal and the informal sector. To what extent has that been a barrier to entry in the banking and insurance system? Because really we've seen that when you speak about the digitalization of bringing product to market, some of the SMEs we saw with the COVID relief funds that they don't even have bank accounts, or in some cases those bank accounts are even linked to their personal bank accounts, and therefore it disqualifies them to be a participant. How do we fix that problem? Because it also speaks to what Councillor Nkadimeng was talking about, removing the mama at the taxi rank and putting her somewhere else. And it's that description of being formal and informal that messes up the system.
Sure. I think the one thing I can say is venturing into informal is very difficult. But venturing into informal with a formal hat is even disastrous. So, and also venturing into informal with a big, rather arrogant attitude is also not very helpful. So you need to understand the lay of the land. One of the things we did at Old Mutual was to set up a business unit whose focus was to serve the informal market, the underserved market. And what that did was to actually make that business unit deliberate in how it saw the market, how it understood the market, even the type of research you do in that market. It's not the kind of quant research, it's going and talking with the people. It is really understanding and getting under the skin of the people. We partnered with funeral parlors. One of the biggest money spinners, or at least informal business in this country, is burial societies. And those burial societies have history in this country. They were actually set up under the spirit of Ubuntu, where black communities realized that they needed to put hands together when there's death in the family. And that actually evolved to a point where people realized, oh, we can actually make money from this. So it was very important for us to partner with those structures. And that helped us to actually understand what their needs were, understand how we serve them. Lastly, COVID has pushed everybody to a space where we thought we never would get to. And one of the things we have done is actually this whole thing about digitization. Now we sit at home, we work. In terms of serving the communities, we developed WhatsApp servicing. People don't have to go to our branches and spend lots of money at time trying to commute to our branches. They can actually do a claim. The whole thing Asinkati was saying around taking a picture of a portal. People now can take a picture of a death certificate or a claim. So it really is pushing the way we think as financial services, and really serving people in a manner that is convenient and cost-effective for them.
Thank you so much for that. Nolthando, my partner in everything. I've done enough talking vandaag, ne?
Thank you.
Questions that you've received, which one sparks your interest?
I think this one segues very nicely from the question that you've just asked. It's from Amanda Msindwana, and she asks on YouTube, she asks, what support is there for women in informal businesses, aka vendors, and women with disabilities to be included in capacity building on wealth management, life insurance, and disability management platforms?
This one, I think, goes back to Sis Thembisa as well, but I would also like to hear Gloria's comments on that one.
Okay, I'll start. Sis Jill can add. We need mentorship. We need coaching. One of the things I've realized as I have grown older is that the young generation is blasé about the war. They've got this, we talk about millennials, they come into the workplace, they think things will happen easy. They think they've got a degree. I also thought that when I finished, I wanted to drive a dolphin. The dolphin was the first thing that was, and yeah, I soon realized that it was never to happen soon. And I think we need young women who are conscious about the struggle, who equip themselves. We are behind the curve now. We were talking about certain careers. Now we're talking about coding. Now we're talking about data engineers. We need women who equip themselves with these new skills to make sure that they get the voice on the table. The way you're going to get the voice on the table is by making sure that you are progressive in how you are equipping yourself, so that you earn the seat on the table, so to speak. Whether it is you are an employee or you are setting up a business, it saddens me that most of the startup businesses that I come across are always male. And I ask, where are the female startups? Because this is where we talk about wealth creation. Wealth creation is about you doing things for yourself, you equipping yourself with information, and therefore understanding how you're going to better make money. And I think it's important that young people find mentorship. We've got a program at Old Mutual around women mentorship. And those are some of the things that I think as big corporates, we need to make sure that we are deliberate. And it's a two-way thing. It is the corporate must do these things, and they must create a conducive environment in the workplace for women to succeed. But women must also come in understanding that they need to bring their part onto the table.
That question speaks also about the existing exclusion, and that's where I want to bring Mam Gloria in. Moving the conversation forward, there are portfolios that have been designed, developed, they've worked on the side of WIPHOLD and Old Mutual. We are in current day 2020 in an economic crisis. Where do we even push the envelope to say, that pothole, I want to take a picture of it and WhatsApp it to whoever is in charge there?
Well, we're also in an awkward situation again as this generation, right? We came from a place where we were told, if you don't go to school, you will not make it. You have to pass. You've got to do this. You've got to do that, right? That was the line. And to the extent that some careers we didn't even know about, and therefore, right? And so now, and this is where this integration between the young people and the old people is, that some of these entrepreneurial things, they confuse me to no end too. Because they are modern, they are, it's like you see risks from that door. And she's so animated. She wants to be in this place and to think, I've seen that movie before, but you haven't seen it. But you think you've got the wisdom, just that some of these things were not available during our time. And so you find that the young entrepreneur of today can do better with sitting with given and say, you start a radio station in the midst of the big ones, the metros, the 702s, the big money, big backers, big. So you just daringly go there and make it. And make it he has. And so the point here is that there is that gap now. I would never have been able to inspire Given to do this. In fact, if he spoke to me before he started, I would have said, are you crazy? So I bump into him when he's already fiddling with this thing, and yours is to now support him because he's there and he is very clear. He wants to go that route. So even for the young professionals, some things we can't even advise, we can't even inspire them nicely because we don't speak the language. We don't. I don't know if I'm understood here.
It's a very important
And
point
so
that you're making.
we need to recognize too that even as we call ourselves leaders and we call ourselves as role models, we are also learning at the same time. And so our listening capacity has got to be sharpened a little bit more. Because when a child says, I want to go to New York, I have no job, but I just want to be on Netflix. I said, what? When in fact, my mother said, you will pass your BCom, you will apply for a job, you will be an Anglo-American, and that's exactly what I did. So we need to listen a bit more, and we need to a little bit more open, and give those, there are certain things which are standard, those governance things. In fact, we need to stress a little bit more now that thou shalt not steal.
Oh, yeah.
Thou shalt not steal. That remains. What is not yours, don't do it. COVID has showed the madness around this. It's very heartless, this thing of taking money from that kind of vulnerable person, disabled person, gender-based violence, you name it, all those hazards. And you find an accommodation and space to steal that money for your Ferrari. That's heartless. And so I guess our failures has got to come back again and say, we have to force the value system because we've taken the long route and we are better for that. So Rai Sibe has been a CFO for a bank for 10 years. We know now that we do have a woman banker, wherever she is. She stood there for 10 years and actually did this and stayed it out. We have to encourage the young professionals that please don't roll as much as this. Don't chase money. We do want bankers. We do want life people. We do want actuaries who are known and with authority. We do want you to go out there to Oxford and teach about being an actuary in a desperately emerging country as South Africa, which has got two worlds. That actuary must translate our business into. So we need people to still take these difficult routes, this boring route, but we also need to encourage entrepreneurs to do the thing. But to do that, we need to be backed by our next generation of leader, because some things we just don't understand.
Thank you so much for hitting the right notes there. Tando, one last question for Mamunonkulego Koboto before we open to the floor.
This is an interesting one. We have a caller who called into the station. His name is Sandile, and he asks, just to advise us men, especially who are really committed to supporting our partners become the best at what they do, what can we do to be better support for our partners? What should we be aware of, and where should we understand that we need to do better?
Wow, That's so sweet.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so
That is
beautiful.
so sweet. Yeah. You know, I divorced and I was just horrified by the experiences I went through in my marriage. And I just had this determination that this must not carry on into the next generation. Because it has to stop with this generation of my ex-husband. And so I trained my sons to be better husbands and better fathers to their children. Unfortunately, my son divorced because although I trained him, I didn't realize that the women would be broken. You know, so, and I'm not saying he was innocent in the breakup, by no means. He made his own mistakes also. But when you are trying to be this loving husband to a broken woman, she just could not accept this love. Because remember, if you don't love yourself, it's difficult to love to accept the love from someone else. So it's not just the men, the women also must deal with their brokenness.
Yeah.
You know, but I love how he became such a good father to his children and how they co-parent together in peace. I mean, it's just the most marvelous thing that my grandchildren are happy because both parents are doing this thing happily. So it needs both people to become aware of where these mistakes are, because I really believe that it is possible to have normal, loving relationships. But it is the brokenness that is destroying everything. So the man must heal his own brokenness, and the woman must heal her own brokenness. And we've got to understand as a society that the woman of 2020 is not the same as the woman of 1820. Let's not have the same expectations of her. You know, she's a professional, she has ambitions, but she wants to be a good wife. She wants to be a mother to her children. She needs a supportive system. Not that at work we are trying, I'm sure Nomaswazi, come up with all sorts of programs, but that support needs to be at home as well, so that this woman is given space to follow her own ambitions in a loving environment. You know, I mean, the COVID divorces have just been shocking.
Yeah.
And the increase in gender-based violence. Because now you're faced with this man, because you could escape to work, now you're faced with this man every day and you realize that this marriage was never there. So, I mean, I listened to my young son, my last born, saying, I'll never marry mama. I mean, all of my friends, their parents are divorced. We've never seen this thing work. And it hurts me. But you are the generation who can solve this thing. You know, we failed you, but you can solve it by, you've got so much on the internet and everything else that can help you on the journey towards healing, so that we can have those beautiful relationships. You don't have to accept, because you even as a woman, you don't think you are worthy of love. You don't believe you are worthy of love. So you attract these men who abuse you, you know. So it starts with me, guys. It starts with me. This is the message of Awakened. It starts with me. Let's not wait for the men to change. Let us change ourselves and heal ourselves. And then we'll begin to attract the right kind of men. And you'll be able to help that man that you've attracted towards that journey. So my young son has found love.
Oh, yeah.
And I can hear the language now, that they realize that it was hurtful to grow up without a father. And although they'll kill me, this is radio, Jesus. and they understand that they've got to work on this thing together, so that they can have a peaceful, loving relationship that they can build from, and hopefully one day get married. It can be done.
I love those answers, and thank you so much to Sandile Siyamthanda ke lo mfo. Opening questions to the floor. Do we have one that you are interested in, Nolthando? We've got a roving mic on the floor. Super.
That's a nice question.
Good evening, everybody. I've got 2 points. The first one is just to compliment Old Mutual and Power in what they brought to us today, especially it being in October, 2 months post Women's Month. And then my second point, it's more on a personal note. I'm a stage 3 stomach cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in 2018. And October is for breast cancer. So this is directed to the retail part of it, that we as Black people, African, we get bombarded with funeral covers. And then with the life covers, they don't promote in such a way such that people can understand that you can build on life cover, and that can be your wealth that you can leave to your kids. So we need to promote dreaded disease. We need to make our people understand that they need to ensure their life. Not only when you are dead, but also when you are living.
Yeah.
With that said, I would like to thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Beautiful comment.
Love and light to you. Can I just get Sis Thembisa to answer that question? Dread disease cover, this is one that we almost actually completely forgot about, especially with the health issues that we have as South African women that we don't put a spotlight on.
Sure. Thank you for that, Sissy. And I think point well made. There's history in this. The history is HIV. So the old products required people to go for blood testing for medical underwriting. And people were very scared to go for that. And that actually built a mindset that for you to have life cover, you need to go for a medical underwriting that involves blood testing. But the truth is, products have evolved. We now have dreaded disease life products. We now actually have life products where you can choose if you don't want to do medical underwriting. In fact, we have products that cover chronic and dreaded disease such as HIV, such as cancer. Those things have been designed for. And I think we haven't done a good job, as Sissy is saying, around promoting those products. And it has actually been one of the focus areas for us. We launched a product, I think a month ago in Old Mutual, which is new age product. And one of the features of that product is that you can actually layer. If you want to buy a funeral, you can buy a funeral. And if you actually want to upgrade, you don't need to go and take another product, which is going to cost you another debit order. You actually, it's a modular product. You can then buy a life product on top of your funeral product. Because the truth is, funeral is a should something happens, and it for us Black people and people who don't have access to overdrafts, etc., when death occurs, you end up going to mashonisas. So there is a space for funeral, but it can't be that everybody buys a funeral to an extent that when someone passes on, people are left destitute. And the life product is very critical where when the breadwinner passes on, because now there's a 2 million that's left behind to take care of children. And also for even the person when is diagnosed with that dreaded disease, that person can access money. So I think the point is made, Sissy. Products are out there. We just need to change our own mindsets as customers to understand that you actually can access those products.
Thank you so much for that answer. Nolthando, last question, maybe we can squeeze in even two.
Right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Thembisile Nkadimeng. I'm all the way from Rustenburg. I will represent women in mining, and I feel I'm in the midst of giants. I'm really grateful to have been invited here. My question will go to you, Mama Gloria. As WIPHOLD, we are currently having WIM, which is Women in Mining. And I'd like to know, seeing the strides that you have made with women in all other areas like rural and all, how are we bringing this into the professional environment, given the challenges that women are faced with, and progression becomes really an issue for them to really break through? I heard somebody talking about the glass ceiling, but I think the ceiling is broken as we have most women in the middle management. But for them to progress into the senior management role, it becomes an issue. And I don't see anybody advocating much for them, except for them to try and make sure that they impress. They do 10 times harder. They go down there and still try to impress. You get into the boardroom, you must prove beyond reasonable doubts that you've got what it takes to really break through the ceiling. I am coming here hoping that out of these conversations will come out better and really find ways to really improve women who find themselves in these positions, finding them stuck. I will end by saying I saw on TEDx, they were talking about the missing 33%, to say our mentors will talk about leading self, leading others, but they don't really get to the crux of it, which is the business strategy and the financial aspect around it. So as a woman leader, you are expected to be bold, be able to talk, be able to lead others. But our mentors tend to miss the most important part, which is how do you get the business to the next level, especially on the bottom line. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that question, Thembisile. Ma'am Gloria,
Wow.
it speaks to that war.
You remind me of, every year there's a mining in Durban. Yeah. It tends to be in Cape Town. And we went to that mining in Durban, and this whole thing of women not making it through the thing. Firstly, the mining in Durban, there was 5 women, I think, in total. So I asked this question, and I thought it's a proper question. So one CEO, and I won't say who's the CEO, said to me, and when somebody is pushing you down, said, "My lady, my lady, mining, you need balls. You need balls. To go underground, you need balls." So he went on and on and on and on, whatever. And I asked the facilitator that I need to answer this because the question itself has not been answered. But if we're going to talk about balls, you want me to talk about my breasts? Is this the conversation we have here? Should I say, show me your balls, I'll show you my breasts? Is this where this has degenerated this down to? Or are we talking about women in mining in terms of how exactly do we make sure that they also make it in the system of mining? There are engineers, there are artisans, there are people who have done, and there are mining businesses which are not that deep, because one of the explanations was that the deeper you go, the capacity to, so if that's a health issue, because I wouldn't know, I haven't been there, but maybe some of the mines going down, complicated, I do not know. But there are also marginal mines, magazine, coal, and those kinds of things. They're not deep. And so why is it that the women managers are still struggling to make it even in this? And so I think the bottom line is that it's one of those sectors, I must say, as WIPHOLD, we failed to get into very hard. When I'm saying failed, we are 20% of Sasol mining, but we are not operational. So, and things are said, we have a voice, is where our hands are dirty, we're operational. So in a way, I may have to just refer you to people who are in that industry. Is a very key thing as to what gets stuck there. I know what gets stuck in banking. I know what gets stuck in the rest of financial services. I'm quite at sea as to where is that thing, that blockade, in terms of in the mining industry, because at a higher level, we will be in the boards and all of those kinds of things, but you're asking to be, how do I become operational a leader?
Yeah.
And in there, we need somebody, I wouldn't be, but I understand exactly what you're asking. And I would really like you to refer to somebody who can you actually talk to personally to deal with that.
I must thank you very much as panelists. This has been a worthy conversation. Hopefully there'll be much more, because 1 day or 2 hours is not going to solve them. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much for tuning into the special Power Business broadcast of the Old Mutual Women in Finance. Stay tuned to Power 98.7.
On FM, online, and DSTV channel 889. This is Power 98.7.
Attention all shoppers. Simplify your search for great service providers and traders on YEP, the newest online marketplace. View businesses near you like plumbers, locksmiths. Woo! He looks great. Electricians and so much more. All local, all vetted and all star rated. To ensure you get the best of great, simply download YEP from the App Store and find great today. Terms and conditions apply. Calling Chip Nail at front desk. Nail tech needed.
This is the sound of spring.
Power 98.7, connecting you to the world. Now we're talking.
Power Business was brought to you by YEP, a digital marketplace for small trusted businesses.
Power News.
The top stories at 8. The education sector demands government make school funding a priority. And will Shepherd Bushiri receive bail? The High Court makes that determination tomorrow. A very good evening. I'm Thomas White. Equal Education has expressed its dissatisfaction with the move to slash the basic education budget over the next 3 years. This in reaction to the medium-term budget policy statement delivered yesterday by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni. Co-head of research at Equal Education, Opolang Selebalo, says the 2.2 billion cuts that were made to the provincial education infrastructure in June should have been reversed to continue with long-delayed projects at the country's schools. Selebalo says the cuts to education funding are geared towards paying out other businesses' debts.
Mboweni's medium-term budget policy statement, which was delivered yesterday, is devastating for many social services, including basic education. Despite the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on lives and livelihoods, government will spend money on paying off debt as well as mismanaged state-owned enterprises like South African Airways and Eskom. While learners sit in overcrowded classrooms and use unsafe toilets and school taps run dry, Minister Mboweni has chosen to sacrifice education funding.
And President of the South African Local Government Association, Thembi Nkadimeng, says legislation moves too slowly in the local government sphere, which stalls quick transformation for communities. Nkadimeng was part of a panel discussion hosted by Power 98.7 in partnership with Old Mutual, discussing the milestones and challenges faced by women in the financial sector. She says legislation should be implemented as its drafters intended it to be. Nkadimeng says the white paper on local government, finalized in 1998, cannot respond to the challenges faced by communities today.
It's no longer talking to what we have. Why do you have to pick up a phone or knock at the municipal building? Rather than taking a picture of a pothole, our GIS system will be up to scratch. Our Wi-Fi, you just send it and it tells me corner, whatever and whatever, and I go and service it immediately. Possibly you could be able to do that. But what do I want in my 205 municipalities? Dear caller, it's not feasible, it's not practical. Is the person on the other line available, by the way? It rings non-end.
And several high-profile bail applications resume in court tomorrow. Judgment is expected in the appeal by a former Bosasa COO, Angelo Agrizzi, of a failed bail application in the Commercial Crimes Court. His bail was denied earlier this month when it emerged that he transferred significant funds to an offshore bank account. Agrizzi failed to disclose this to the court. It was therefore deemed a flight risk despite his poor health conditions, which have landed him in hospital. The NPA's Sindisiswe Dwala has more.
The High Court of South Africa, Gauteng Local Division in Johannesburg, will tomorrow hand down judgment on the bail appeal of former Bosasa Chief Operations Officer Angelo Agrizzi. Agrizzi has been incarcerated since the 14th of October after the Palm Ridge Specialized Crimes Court refused him bail. On the 15th of October, he was admitted to hospital. The investigating directorate argued that his release from bail could result in him possibly evading trial.
At the same time, enlightened Christian Gathering church leader Shepherd Bushiri and his co-accused will find out tomorrow whether their bail application will succeed. Bushiri and his wife, along with another suspect, were arrested on fraud and money laundering charges amounting to just over 100 million rand. Speaking to Power News outside the Pretoria Magistrates Court, where Bushiri appeared on Monday, scores of his supporters demanded his release.
Today, I'm who I am because of Major One and Prophetism. They have changed our lives. They have changed our families.
I don't care what people say, what they think about him. Only thing that I know about him, he taught me Bible.
Taking a look across at the Atlantic, where the race for the US presidency is approaching its end amid a raging pandemic. In most polls, Democratic nominee Joe Biden maintains a substantial lead over President Donald Trump nationwide. Both Trump and Biden are crossing paths today in Florida as they intensify their campaigns. Power News' Thabo Polokwane has the details.
Although the election will ultimately be decided by the statewide results which drive the Electoral College, Biden's lead nationally is wider than any presidential candidate has held in more than 2 decades in the final days of the campaign. The resurging pandemic continues to dominate the race, with the U.S. recording nearly 79,000 cases overnight, with almost 1,000 deaths in a day. Despite these staggering numbers, Trump continues to hold large rallies in hotspot states.
ABC Washington Post, they're fakes. Trump, 17 down in Wisconsin. 17. Think of it. And they tried it last time 4 years ago, too, and that didn't work out too well. It's just unbelievable.
Biden has blasted Trump's approach towards the pandemic.
The refusal of the Trump administration to recognize the reality we're living through at a time when almost 1,000 Americans a day are